vez, otra vez, one more time. This will be the last grammar for this unit that we've been working on. So hopefully you've already seen the adjective, either video or listened to it in class, obviously, if you're catching up on this on YouTube. But we've had, one video on adjectives, one video on using articles, aka the words for the or the words for a or some, that kind of go hand in hand with each other. And this last video that's going to be called Noun Adjective Agreement is kind of putting both of those lessons together. So if you haven't had them before, I recommend you start by one of those so you know exactly what the heck is going on in this one. So this is on page 66. The previous ones we were on page 56 for the adjectives and 61 for the articles that I just mentioned. So towards the end of the chapter, right, page 66. Adjectives, like I mentioned the first time, are ways that you describe people. So we had a bunch of words. You had like tall, you had nice, you had funny, you had serious, athletic, intelligent, a bunch of different ways to describe people. And then the last time we talked about articles, which are the words for like the, or the words for a, or the words for some. So now we're going to be kind of making little sentences with them. So it's like the tall boy, or the smart girl, the athletic man, whoever you're describing, but we're going to be making little phrases. So I mentioned this in the last lesson in class and on YouTube because it's just like a thing that needs to be used with it. You have a bunch of different ways to spell words in Spanish. That's just like 100% all the time. There will be multiple spellings when it comes to what a word means. You just have to learn how to choose the right one to make it match like the person, the noun pretty much that you are connecting it to. So for this chapter, we're mostly talking about people because we're describing them. Are they brown haired? Are they tall? Are they big? Are they small, young, old? Any of that. Of course, this works for any noun. Nouns, hopefully you remember, are person, people, places, things, ideas, right? There's a bunch of different things that fall under nouns. So just because we're focusing on people now doesn't mean you won't follow these same rules when talking about your computer or your house or your dog or your car or any other noun that you come across. Food, right? Any of that. But we're starting with people. So for this noun adjective little mini lesson, you have to remember, just like we did in the previous couple of lessons, the last two, just like you changed the spelling for like the adjective to make it match the person. Like if it was a girl, you would say alta for tall. You wouldn't say alto because it's not the guy spelling. And you had to choose the right word for like the. Like it would have to be a la if it was for a girl or an L if it was for a boy. You're putting all of these rules together. So basically what noun adjective agreement means is kind of what you can hear in the title. It means that the noun spelling and the adjective spelling have to agree. They have to match with each other. So like if I'm talking about a girl and I say chica with an A, that means the adjective, however I'm describing her, as funny, tall, nice, whatever the word is that I'm using for her, has to also have an A. And then that means that my article, my word for like the girl or the tall girl, the nice girl, the athletic girl, also has to have an A to make sure that everything matches each other. So some examples. Always, like I mentioned, you kind of have to ask yourself two questions when it comes to spelling anything. What's the gender? Is it spelled feminine? Is it spelled masculine? And then what number am I looking at? Is it a one thing? Is it singular? Or is it plural? Is it a bunch of stuff that I'm talking about? So these are like the 4 ways, like usual, there will always be 4 ways that you're going to end up matching stuff in a sentence. What if I'm talking about masculine noun? Right, so here they're using a boy. Technically, it could be anything that's spelled in the masculine way. So, for example, if I say libro, a book, telefono would also work. I'm just using libro instead. Libro, that's not a guy, that's not a girl, that's an inanimate object, right? But just by how it's spelled, it ends with an O. You would put it under the category, you would label it as masculine. So it doesn't matter what you talk about, people, places, things, ideas, anything. As long as it ends with an O, you have to make sure that the adjective and that the article all match it the same way. So if something ends in a masculine spelling and it's singular, only one thing, you have to say L and make sure that the spelling for whatever your adjective that you're using is matches your noun. So if you notice, the O's are highlighted. They have to have O's at the end because you're using masculine singular. What if it's a lot of O's? Or what if it's a lot of items that you're talking about that are masculine? What if it's boys? What if it's books, right, with S's? Then you have to change all the words again. You're still going to be saying the tall boys, but now you have different spelling. So instead of saying L, if it's plural, you say los. Instead of saying chico, because it's plural, you say chicos. O-S again. Instead of saying alto, because it's plural, you say altos. So if you notice, all of them will have OS, OS, OS. The only difference is that for the masculine singular, you have an L. You would assume, based off the rules, it would be a lo, because the plural would be los, just like you would be a la, and then the plural would be las. But sadly, it doesn't have 100% like the pattern that you're looking at. So L would be singular, los would be plural. Same rules if you're looking at feminine. So if I'm saying the tall girl, I would say la, there's an A because I'm talking about a girl. Chica, there's an A because I'm talking about a girl. Alta, there's an A because I'm talking about a girl. If there's multiple girls, everything gets an S, right? S is all around. So las, because it's the word the, but now it's a lot of girls. Chicas with an S because again it's a girl but a lot of them, and then altas because it's girls but there's a lot of them. So just have to kind of always remind yourself that you might use the correct words, like you might say a version of the, you might say a version of how to say tall, you might say a version of the person you're talking about, but you have to match it. Because what if, for example, I'm gonna use the girl one that we're looking at here, but if I said la chica son altas, first half of that sentence is singular. Son means are. Altas is spelled like multiple. So you might ask me, so you're talking about one girl that was tall? Or were there a lot of girls that were tall, but you just didn't grammatically fix it and you made it look like it was only one person? You would get incorrect information. You wouldn't know who exactly I'm talking about. Are you talking about the one tall girl that like needs to pick up a bag? Or are you saying that all of those girls need to come pick something up? Like, who are you referring to? So you have to be really mindful to make sure that you're matching all of your spellings in those sentences. We're going to keep practicing this literally for like all of Spanish. Spanish 1, Spanish 2, Spanish 3, it's always going to be a rule. So practice makes perfect. The better, or the more you do it, the better you'll get at it. But just remember this, always check your spellings. Don't lose points because you're like mixing and matching spellings. I mentioned this previously in one of the other videos. There are a few, not a lot, but a few of the adjectives that don't actually end with an A or an O. Some of them end with an E. Anytime that a word ends with an E, it kind of matches both. The same spelling can be used for the masculine spelling, or the same spelling can be used for the feminine spelling. Or sometimes they don't even end with an E. They end with a consonant. So an example of a word that ended with an E was grande, big. It ends with an E. So if I'm talking about a big girl, I would say la chica grande. Talking about a big guy, el chico grande. Still spelled the same way. Only time that would change is if you're saying that multiple people were big. So then grande becomes grandes with an S. And that spelling would work for a bunch of guys that might be big, a bunch of girls that would be big. They would all be grandes. There was another word that didn't have an A or an O at the end and also didn't have an E. We had the word joven, or young. Based off of that, you also would not have to change your ending for A's and O's. So if it's a girl that's young, la chica joven. If it's a guy that's young, el chico joven. If a lot of people were young, like all of these kids over here are running around who are super young, you would say los chicos jovenes. So ES at the end, because you can't just add an S. Grammatically, it wouldn't make sense. You need to have a vowel and then a consonant. So that's also an English rule. I'm hoping you guys remember that. But you would put an ES at the end. So it would work no matter who you talk about for that. And I think that's that last section that they had for you there. To make an adjective plural, make sure you put the S. If it does not include a vowel, add the E, and then you put the letter S. That's basically what this entire unit ends up being with. Just like take part 1, take part 2, match together, and we do mean match, right? Make sure A's are across the board, make sure O's are across the board, make sure S's are across the board, depending on what you're trying to say. We're going to, of course, keep going over this in class. You will have classwork, you will have quizzes, all about matching these spellings. So hopefully it's pretty easy. If not, of course, ask me on anything that you guys might need help with. And of course, I'll talk about it again in class. So I'll see you guys then. And I hope it was relatively easy. Adios.